I made it. Maddie, Sam, Dad's on the top. I love you so much.
Let's go, let's go!
I'm okay.
Hey,
Just need a second.
stay with me!
Oxygen.
Go down, help!
On the 12th of May, 2023, at precisely 5 hours and 35 minutes in the morning, the scene you just witnessed unfolded. The location was the summit of Mount Everest, at an altitude of 29,029 feet above sea level, a small, desolate space known as the roof of the world, a job that required him to perform under extreme pressure, saving lives in the treacherous Rocky Mountains. He was an expert in human physiology and the limits of the body. On this day, however, standing on the highest point on Earth, surrounded by a deceptively clear sky, his expertise would not be enough to save him from a single, irreversible error in judgment. Nathan Cole Wheeler was part of a large, well-organized expedition. He was climbing with a group of 9 commercial climbers and a team of 5 elite Sherpas. Their plan was meticulous, designed for safety and success. They had departed from the highest camp the previous evening at 8 o'clock, aiming to reach the summit by 6 in the morning and begin their descent shortly after. The weather was cooperating perfectly. The temperature was 36 degrees Fahrenheit below zero, brutally cold but manageable with the right equipment. The wind blew at a steady 22 miles per hour, almost calm for Everest standards. Everything seemed to be under control. Before we continue, leave a comment telling us where you are watching from. If these stories interest you, please leave a like and subscribe. Now, on what seemed like a perfect morning, everything was about to go terribly wrong. To be here, Nathan Cole Wheeler had invested $62,000 of his personal savings. He had trained 6 days a week for 18 months, pushing his body to its absolute limits. He was supported by an experienced team and equipped with the best gear modern technology could provide. This was not the journey of a reckless amateur. It was the culmination of years of methodical preparation and dedication. Yet all of that training, all of that investment, and all of that experience would be rendered meaningless by a choice that lasted only 4 minutes and 20 seconds. An entire lifetime of discipline was undone in the time it takes to listen to a song. To understand how a man so prepared could make such a choice, we need to go back. We need to understand who Nathan Cole Wheeler was. Nathan Cole Wheeler was born on the 3rd of August, 1989, in Salt Lake City, Utah. He grew up in a home defined by quiet diligence. His father was a high school physics teacher who taught the laws of the universe, while his mother worked as a librarian, curating worlds of stories and knowledge. This upbringing instilled in Nathan a deep respect for both immutable facts and the human stories that unfold within them. He was a man who believed in rules, in systems, and in preparation. After graduating with honors, he moved to Denver, Colorado, where he built a life that seemed to mirror the stability of his childhood. He lived in a modest home in the suburbs with his wife, Sarah, an elementary school teacher he had been married to for 7 years. Together, they were raising their 9-year-old daughter, Emma Grace Wheeler, the undisputed center of Nathan's world. By profession, Nathan Cole Wheeler was a flight paramedic with Flight for Life Colorado. His job was to board a helicopter and fly into the most remote and dangerous parts of the Rocky Mountains to save lives. He was the person lowered on a cable into a blizzard to reach an injured skier, the calm voice treating a fallen climber on a narrow ledge. This work forged in him an almost obsessive meticulousness. Before every shift, he would inspect each piece of his medical equipment not once, but 3 times. He applied this same unwavering discipline to his personal life and his passions. He saw the world as a series of risks that could be managed through rigorous protocol and superior knowledge. In his mind, failure was not a product of bad luck, but of inadequate preparation. He earned $85,000 a year saving strangers, a responsibility he shouldered with immense pride. The driving force in Nathan Cole Wheeler's life, however, was not on a mountain, but in his own home. His daughter, Emma, had been diagnosed with cystic fibrosis at the age of 6. It was a genetic condition that attacked her lungs, turning the simple act of breathing into a daily struggle. This reality reshaped Nathan's world entirely. His meticulous nature was no longer just a professional trait. It became a father's desperate attempt to control an uncontrollable disease. He managed Emma's treatments, charted her lung function, and dedicated himself to giving her a life of normalcy. His decision to climb the world's highest mountains was inextricably linked to her fight. He wanted to show his daughter that the body, even a fragile one, could achieve the impossible. He wanted to stand where the air was thinnest and breathe for her, a symbolic act of a father's love. His journey into mountaineering began at the age of 21, during a trip with college friends to the Grand Teton in Wyoming. It was an experience that fundamentally changed him. Standing on that granite peak, surrounded by a vast and indifferent wilderness, he felt a sense of clarity he had never known. It wasn't the adrenaline of risk that captivated him, but the absolute accountability the environment demanded. In the mountains, there were no excuses. There was only the quality of your decisions. He pursued this passion with the same methodical progression he applied to everything else. He started with smaller, less technical peaks, building his skills logically and safely over more than a decade. The mountains became his sanctuary, a place where the complex anxieties of his life were simplified into the next step, the next breath, the next secure hold on the rock. Over the next 12 years, Nathan Cole Wheeler built an impressive mountaineering resume. He summited Mont Blanc in July of 2017, where he honed his skills on glacial ice. He climbed Kilimanjaro in September of 2018 to understand his body's reaction to moderate altitude. In January of 2019, he faced the brutal winds of Aconcagua, the highest peak in South America. His most significant achievement came in October of 2021, when he successfully summited Cho Oyu in the Himalayas. This was his first climb above 8,000 meters, a brutal proving ground that gave him the physiological and technical confidence to attempt Everest. He was not a daredevil chasing glory. Each expedition was a calculated step, a chapter in a long and patient education taught by the mountains themselves. This devotion was anchored by deeply personal rituals. Before every major climb, he had an unbreakable routine with his daughter. Over a crackling satellite phone connection, thousands of miles apart, he would read her the same book, Oh, the Places You'll Go, by Dr. Seuss. It was a promise whispered across continents that he would return. Tucked inside his down suit, he always carried a small, laminated photograph of him and Emma on her 7th birthday, a tangible reminder of the world he was fighting to come back to. Tied to the zipper of his jacket was a tiny toy carabiner she had given him, a good luck charm he would touch for reassurance during the toughest moments. These were not just superstitions. They were the tethers that connected his two worlds, the unforgiving solitude of the high peaks and the profound love waiting for him at home. For the Everest expedition, Nathan Cole Wheeler prepared for 18 months. He invested $62,000 of his family savings, a sum that required significant sacrifice. He took a 3-month unpaid leave from his job, forfeiting income and precious time with his family. His training regimen was punishing, supervised by a former Olympic athlete. 6 days a week, he pushed his body through long-distance mountain runs, technical ice climbing, and sessions in a special chamber that simulated the oxygen-starved environment of high altitude. He researched every piece of gear, every haze of the climb, and every potential danger. He had done everything a person could possibly do to prepare. He had built a fortress of discipline and experience around himself. But the one thing he couldn't prepare for was the overwhelming power of a father's love at the highest point on Earth. The journey into the sky began in darkness. On the evening of May 11th, 2023, inside a small tent at Camp 4, Nathan Cole Wheeler awoke not to an alarm, but to the internal clock of a man on a mission. Outside, the temperature was 36 degrees Fahrenheit below zero, and the wind howled like a distant predator. Every movement was a deliberate battle against the cold and the crushing lack of oxygen. He began his final ritual, checking each piece of his life support system with the precision of a surgeon. Oxygen valve, mask seal, boot heaters. Then he pulled out the laminated photograph of his daughter, Emma. He stared at her smiling face, a silent promise whispered into the frozen air. In that moment, he was not just a climber. He was a father preparing to bring a piece of his daughter's spirit to the highest point on Earth. His resolve was absolute, forged in love and discipline. Just before their departure, the expedition leader, Pemba Galje Sherpa, gathered the team in the faint glow of their headlamps. His words were not a motivational speech, but a stark recitation of rules carved from decades of survival and loss at high altitude. He looked each climber in the eye and delivered the most critical directive of all. On the summit, the oxygen mask does not come off for any reason. Not for a photo, not for a moment of clarity. He explained that hypoxia at that altitude is a silent assassin. You feel nothing before you collapse. As the team dispersed for their final preparations, Nathan's personal Sherpa, Dawa Tenzin, approached him quietly. With a look of deep concern, he said, "Nathan, I have seen strong men make fatal mistakes at the top. Please promise me you will not remove your oxygen." Nathan Cole Wheeler simply nodded, his mind already focused on the task ahead. At precisely 8 o'clock in the evening, the team of 9 climbers and 5 Sherpas clipped into the fixed ropes and began their final ascent. They moved as a single organism, a string of faint lights inching its way up the colossal dark pyramid of ice and rock. The plan was meticulous. Ascend through the night, reach the summit no later than 6 o'clock in the morning, and begin the descent by 6:30. This schedule provided a crucial buffer, ensuring they would be well below the most dangerous sections before nightfall returned. The climb was a slow, punishing rhythm of step, breathe, rest, repeat. The only sounds were the crunch of metal points biting into the ice, the hiss of oxygen regulators, and the labored breathing of 14 human beings pushing their bodies to the absolute edge of existence. For the first few hours, everything went exactly according to plan. But there was something else Nathan Cole Wheeler carried, an object not on any official checklist. Tucked deep inside a pocket of his down suit was the small pink flag his daughter had designed, along with a compact camera to record a personal message. This was a private mission he had kept partially concealed from his guides, a promise to his daughter that he believed transcended the rigid protocols of the mountain. He saw it not as a violation, but as the very purpose of his journey. What he failed to fully comprehend was that at this altitude, the line between purpose and distraction dissolves. The mountain does not care about intentions. It only recognizes focus and error. And the small, lightweight camera in his pocket carried the weight of a catastrophic misjudgment, a hidden seed of disaster waiting for the thin air of the summit to make it grow. As the hours crawled by, the physiological toll of the death zone became undeniable. At 27,000 feet, each breath felt like inhaling through a narrow straw, delivering only 1/3 of the oxygen available at sea level. Even with supplemental oxygen, the body was in a state of constant decay. Nathan Cole Wheeler, the flight paramedic who understood human physiology better than anyone on the team, could feel his own systems breaking down. His heart hammered against his ribs to circulate oxygen-starved blood. His thoughts became slower, more deliberate, as if moving through thick mud. He was acutely aware that his brain, the very tool he relied on for critical decisions, was being compromised with every foot of elevation gained. He was a master of his body's limits, yet he was now in a place where those limits were becoming terrifyingly irrelevant. The leader's warning seemed to echo in the rhythmic hiss of Nathan Cole Wheeler's oxygen mask. Pemba Gayalje had an absolute, non-negotiable rule about any kind of distraction above 26,000 feet. He had explained that the history of Everest was written in the tragedies of those who lost focus for just a few seconds. A dropped glove while adjusting a camera could lead to frostbitten fingers and a fatal inability to operate equipment. A moment of euphoria spent taking a photo could obscure the sudden arrival of a storm. The mountain demanded 100% of a person's attention, 100% of the time. This was not a suggestion, it was a law of physics. The environment was so unforgiving that a single momentary lapse in judgment was statistically indistinguishable from a death sentence. A simple distraction was the most dangerous piece of equipment one could carry. As dawn approached, the first slivers of light began to paint the horizon in hues of orange and purple, revealing the breathtaking curvature of the earth below. The team had reached the south summit, a false peak just a few hundred vertical feet from their goal. The final treacherous ridgewalk lay before them, a knife edge of snow with terrifying drops on either side. Below them, a sea of clouds stretched to infinity, creating the illusion of standing on an island in the sky. A wave of profound euphoria, mixed with utter exhaustion, washed over Nathan Cole Wheeler. The summit was now visible, a small cone of white against a deep indigo sky. It seemed so close, a tangible reward for 18 months of sacrifice. But in this beautiful, serene landscape, the danger was at its absolute peak. The air was at its thinnest, the body at its weakest, and judgment at its most fragile. The summit of Mount Everest is not a majestic, sprawling peak. It is a small, treacherous dome of ice and snow, a space no larger than a big dining room table, roughly 20 feet long by 7 feet wide. At an altitude of 29,029 feet, it is the absolute edge of the world. To the north, the ground vanishes into a 9,800-foot drop into Tibet. To the south, it is a sheer 7,900-foot plunge into Nepal. Above is only the cold, thin darkness of the upper atmosphere. Below is a frozen labyrinth of rock and ice. Standing there offers a view of the Earth's curvature, a profoundly beautiful and deceptive sight. It creates a false sense of peace, a feeling of having conquered nature, when in reality it is the single most vulnerable place a human being can be. This vulnerability is not just about the risk of a fall. The true killer on the summit is the air itself. The area above 26,000 feet is known as the death zone for a simple, brutal reason. There is not enough oxygen to sustain human life. The air pressure is only 1/3 of what it is at sea level, meaning every desperate breath a climber takes delivers only 33% of the oxygen their body needs.
Even with a mask and bottled oxygen, the body is in a state of constant decay. Brain cells are dying, muscle tissue is breaking down. It is an environment where the human body is literally consuming itself to survive. Acclimatization is impossible. The clock is always ticking down, and every second spent in this invisible poison slowly pushes a person closer to a point of no return. Because of this, there is an unwritten law known by every person who dares to enter this realm, a rule forged from a century of tragedy. The summit is only halfway. You do not linger. You do not celebrate for long. You do not get comfortable. The goal is not to reach the top. The goal is to get back down alive. This law exists because every resource is finite and rapidly disappearing. The oxygen in the tanks is a countdown to suffocation. The climber's physical energy, burned at an astonishing rate just to stay warm, is depleting exponentially. And the weather, which can seem perfectly calm one moment, can transform into a lethal, blinding storm in a matter of minutes. Every extra second spent on the summit is not a triumph. It is a gamble, dramatically increasing the statistical probability of a fatal error on the grueling descent. The path to this small, deadly space is a chilling reminder of these stakes. The upper slopes of Everest are a graveyard in the sky. More than 200 bodies of climbers who never made it down remain on the mountain, many of them frozen in place along the main climbing routes, serving as grim landmarks for those who follow. Unlike other mountains where the danger comes from sudden avalanches or collapsing ice, on the summit of Everest, the primary danger is the environment itself. It is a place that demands perfection. It does not forgive a moment of distraction, a brief lapse in judgment, or a minor technical error. Nathan Cole Wheeler was standing on a stage where the price for a single mistake had been paid time and time again by some of the strongest climbers in the world. He was in a place where history had proven that even a few minutes of carelessness could last for an eternity. At 5 hours and 31 minutes in the morning on the 12th of May, 2023, Nathan Cole Wheeler's primary mission was complete. Standing at 29,029 feet, he had successfully finished a 2-minute live broadcast, holding his daughter's pink flag against the sunrise. The connection was flawless. The objective was achieved. In that moment of triumph, however, a new objective formed in his mind. It was a mission not found on any checklist, a goal driven not by the cold logic of survival, but by the overwhelming power of a father's love. He had come this far. He needed to do one more thing, just for her. He turned to his personal Sherpa, Dawa Tenzin, his eyes bright with accomplishment and exhaustion behind his goggles. He communicated his intention. He wanted to record a personal message for Emma, a video where she could see his face, his smile, completely unobstructed by the oxygen mask. Dawa's reaction was immediate and visceral. The experienced guide pleaded with him, his voice urgent and sharp. "No, Mr. Nathan, please don't. It is too dangerous. 1 minute is an eternity here." But Nathan Cole Wheeler, a man who understood physiology better than anyone, was now a victim of it. With a tired smile, he replied, "Just a moment for Emma, Dawa. I'll be fine." He was ignoring the advice of a man who had stood on that very spot 17 times before. With a resolve that defied all logic, his gloved hands began the sequence of actions that would seal his fate. He fumbled with the clips holding his oxygen mask in place. A sudden sharp hiss of escaping air stopped, replaced by the eerie silence of the thin atmosphere. He let the life-giving mask hang loosely to the side of his face. For the first time, the raw, unfiltered air of the summit, at 36 degrees Fahrenheit below zero, hit his exposed skin. From an inner pocket, he pulled out the small camera. He pressed the power button. A tiny red light began to blink, silently recording the final moments of a life defined by meticulous preparation. He held the pink flag and began to speak to his daughter. The first 30 seconds were a wave of pure euphoria, a paradoxical effect of acute hypoxia tricking the brain into a state of profound clarity. He felt powerful, clear-headed, and deeply connected to the little girl waiting for him thousands of miles below. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, a full minute passed. He smiled for the camera, a father telling his daughter that anything was possible. He was standing on top of the world. He did not know that his body was already shutting down, that every second of this loving gesture was a step toward an irreversible end. Then the decay began. At 1 minute and 30 seconds, his speech, once crisp and professional, started to slur, the words blurring slightly at the edges. 2 minutes. His fine motor coordination, the same dexterity he used to save lives in a helicopter, began to fail. The hand holding the small flag started to tremble uncontrollably against the deep blue sky. The footage would later show his eyes losing their sharp focus, a subtle glaze forming as his brain was starved of the fuel it needed to function. He was an expert in the silent lethality of high altitude, yet he was completely oblivious to his own body's desperate failing signals. 3 minutes. He nearly dropped the flag, his fingers suddenly numb and clumsy. 3 minutes and 40 seconds. The critical threshold was crossed. Nathan Cole Wheeler suffered a hypoxic syncope. His brain, deprived of oxygen, triggered its final emergency protocol, a complete and instantaneous shutdown. There was no pain, there was no final thought or moment of panic, just a slow, silent fading from within. 4 minutes. 4 minutes and 10 seconds, 4 minutes and 20 seconds. That was the total time it took for an entire lifetime of discipline to be erased. And then, exactly as you saw at the beginning of this video, the last electrical signal from his brain ceased. His body, which had carried him to the highest point on Earth, became a dead weight. It was not a dramatic struggle, it was a mechanical failure. Like a puppet whose strings had been suddenly cut, he simply switched off. He slumped forward, his body collapsing in a heap and falling heavily onto the summit snow. The impact was a dull, soft thud in the vast silence. The fall was barely 5 feet, from his standing height to the ground, and it lasted less than a single second. The response was immediate. Dawa Tenzin was on him in less than 3 seconds, a blur of frantic motion against the serene backdrop of the Himalayas. He desperately struggled to force the oxygen mask back onto Nathan's face, cranking the regulator valve to its maximum flow. A panicked cry, muffled by his own mask, erupted into his radio, a desperate call to the expedition leader, Pemba Galje, who was just a few feet away. The profound peace of the summit was shattered, instantly transformed into a scene of a desperate, high-altitude medical emergency on the most unforgiving stage imaginable. Within a minute, the entire team surrounded the fallen climber. For the next 47 minutes, on the roof of the world, they fought for his life. A desperate resuscitation attempt began. An emergency injection was administered into his leg, a last-ditch effort to combat the swelling in his brain. But there was no response. At 6 hours and 52 minutes in the morning, the expedition leader made the final gut-wrenching decision. Nathan Cole Wheeler's journey was over. The small camera, recovered from his suit, had recorded everything, including the final sound captured by the satellite device just before the broadcast ended. The faint, distant voice of his daughter, Emma, asking, "Daddy? Daddy?" The final task was the most brutal, governed by the unwritten laws of the death zone. Recovering a body from the summit of Everest is a monumental undertaking, logistically impossible and a mortal risk to any rescue team. The decision was made not out of callousness, but out of the harsh necessity of survival for the living. The team secured Nathan Cole Wheeler's body in a discreet location near the summit, a final act of respect in an unforgiving place. He became the 86th climber to remain permanently on Everest's South Col route, another silent landmark in the graveyard of the sky. His story was now etched into the mountain's long and tragic history, a permanent fixture at 29,029 feet. The scene was a sterile, frozen tableau of a medical failure. Nathan Cole Wheeler's body lay still on the snow, his state-of-the-art equipment perfectly intact but now useless. Inside his suit, the laminated photo of his daughter remained, a silent witness to the decision that led to this moment. The team had administered an emergency injection of dexamethasone, a powerful steroid meant to combat the acute swelling in his brain, but his body showed no vital signs. He was completely unresponsive. After a harrowing consultation via radio with a doctor at base camp, the final, gut-wrenching decision was made. At 6 hours and 52 minutes in the morning, Pemba Galje pronounced him deceased. His personal Sherpa, Dawa Tenzin, then performed the solemn task of recovering the small camera from his suit. It held the complete, unfiltered record of the tragedy. While Nathan Cole Wheeler's body remained on the mountain, his final moments did make the journey down. The small camera was carefully carried back to civilization and delivered to his family a final, heartbreaking message from the roof of the world. The footage contained everything: the triumphant broadcast, the loving words to his daughter, and the silent, swift descent into unconsciousness. In an act of profound grace, the family later authorized a portion of the footage to be used in mountain safety campaigns, hoping that their private tragedy could serve as a public warning to others. A father's last message, intended for his daughter alone, became a timeless lesson on the thin line between love and loss, at the absolute limit of human endurance. The tragedy of Nathan Cole Wheeler was not that the mountain was too dangerous, or that his equipment failed, or that he was unprepared. He died because of a chain of decisions, each one seemingly small, that dismantled a lifetime of discipline. The first was the belief that his expert knowledge of the human body somehow placed him above the mountain's absolute rules. The second was the choice to prioritize a deeply emotional gesture over the cold, hard logic of survival.
The final and most critical was ignoring the desperate, experienced voice of his guide, a man who understood that the summit does not distinguish between love and recklessness. He had invested $62,000 and 18 months of his life to reach that point, only to have it all undone by a choice that lasted just 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Each step in the sequence seemed manageable on its own. Together, they were fatal. His story resonates not because it is unique, but because it is profoundly human. It is the story of the voice inside all of us that whispers, "Just one more minute." It is the quiet confidence that we can manage a risk that others could not, that the rules, this one time, might not apply to us. Nathan Cole Wheeler's final act was driven by a father's love, the purest of human intentions. But the mountain does not negotiate. It does not care about why a rule is broken. It only recognizes that it was. There are no second takes at 29,000 feet. The legacy of Nathan Cole Wheeler, 1989 to 2023, is a heartbreaking lesson that in places of absolute consequence, even the most noble motivations must yield to the unforgiving laws of physics. His story will not be forgotten.